and everyone's time is valuable. Thanks for joining. We hopefully will go through this, efficiently. So I sent out an agenda yesterday. I hope everyone got that. If there's anything we want to add, please do. We will in a minute, but regarding the minutes, I have a transcript of our last meeting. I don't think we're taking minutes in the way that we had previously because we're not required to. So also we won't be requiring a vote on approving the minutes, which we don't have. So I will send that out though, so everyone has a record of the meeting in case they need to go back and look at something that was discussed. But are there any additions to the agenda or suggestions?
One thing, I'm not sure if we want to do this, but with our repair cafe, we already have four towns in the county coordinating. I know Tistria has discussed the idea of whether the county Climate Smart wants to take up the idea of the repair cafe. For the initial one, which we're doing in 2 weeks, it'll just be the towns, but it might be something that the county Climate Smart wants to investigate.
It's great, especially with your experience that you've all developed on doing it. I think we would be able to really understand what we're getting into, and we've got all these great resources and people, the fixers. Yep. So can we talk about that?
Yep, that's why I just wanted to bring it up to edit.
Yeah, I'd love that as an agenda item too, because there's some experience we have now with insurance, and my town is covered in insurance because it's being located in my town, and our insurance carrier is fine. There was no extra cost or anything in covering everyone, but if it's going to be a collaborative multi-towns, it might just make sense to have it under the county. So I'd like to talk about that too. The other quick agenda item, and this probably will fall under the solid waste update. Jolene, I would love to talk about your proposal, especially once we get a coordinator in place that requests your solid waste initiatives in individual towns kind of get streamlined, not all directly to you, but through this task force, through the coordinator. So if that can be a subtopic under the solid waste update.
So how the coordinator and solid waste would potentially, how we could create synergies? Is that how?
Well, just so a lot of the requests are like coming directly to Jolene, which I guess is fine in some sense, but we now have this county CSC, which is really to support town efforts. So if an individual town task force had a request for a composting station or this, or maybe under Patrice's department, maybe under some other county department, it just makes sense that it all gets streamlined through our committee. And especially once there's a coordinator in place, like that can be then the contact person.
Right.
That the coordinator can then go to Jolene and have the conversation. So she's not having the same conversation 27 times with 27 different towns. I'm just trying the process as much as possible. And I do think that's part of our role as the county task force, is to assist town efforts, especially when it has to do with a county department.
Yeah.
So we can talk about it more.
It's a great idea, and this is one of the great benefits of the way in which this coordinator role is evolving, which we'll talk about as item 3, and we'll give everyone an update on that. So we'll have the separate solid waste update. Anything else to add to the agenda? Okay, so community solar and benchmarking. They're the 2 projects that we've had approved to work on by the board. And we've made some progress, but it's slow. So I wanted to give everyone an update as to where we're at. And I wanted to also open up a discussion as to how we could make this process work better. And I'm particularly interested in hearing from the supervisors on that, because we can only follow your guidance. And then, try to implement a better system for, I think a lot of this has to do with how we interact with how the task force volunteers that are taking on these actions interact with officials at the county level in an efficient manner that's respectful of the officials' time, and how we can make this a more direct conversation on some of these things. So community solar, we all know there's some urgency in terms of trying to get a provider that's been authorized so that we can secure discounts for our residents and our businesses that sign up. And historically or recently, those discounts have been about 10% off of the typical bill. And we hear from Kara, Steve, and others who have been involved directly in with these companies, and also with regard to their campaigns, that these, and others I'm sure on this call, that these incentives may be reducing. We've heard that in 2022 could go to 5%. They may be going away altogether. Bandwidth issue with regard to capacity on the of these solar projects that also may be a limiting factor for us. We put together an RFP, so that's the urgency. We put together an RFP, which was based on a NYSERDA template. So we forwarded that, and that was being submitted, we understood, to the controller's office and/or to the attorney for approval, so we could get it out there. And then our task force volunteers worked the work in terms of interviewing and recommending a provider to the board to approve. We haven't gotten that far, and so what we heard this week was that there is a separate RFP process for the county. We hadn't known about this until this week, and that process apparently needs to be adhered to. There's a format of the RFP, and I still have a question, which is above my pay grade, in terms of whether, if we're not purchasing a good or a service, whether we actually have to comply with that RFP protocol. But again, that's above my pay grade. I haven't seen the other documents that go to the procurement policy that would probably answer that question. I've only seen the attachment of the draft RFP. At any rate, if we have to follow this, I'll have to redraft the RFP. I did go through it. All of the information we provide that's requested in the county's format is included in our RFP. I think we provide more information in some cases. So we have all the information, the substance is there, but we're going to have to now reformat it, which will take me some time, not a whole lot of time, but time is scarce, and especially when we're redoing something. And then I will try to move that back to its approval process with the county. Now, the other piece of this is the Office of General Services, and I need some help here understanding how this works from government experts that are on the call here, which I'm not. But the Office of General Services has approved certain providers for these community solar projects in the state. And Ampion is one. There's a list of them. I just got this earlier today. And I don't know what that means in terms of effectively for our county. If OGS has this list that's been approved, I understand we would be wise to select from that list and try to focus on those companies, but I don't understand why that helps to accelerate the process. So
Because it eliminates the RFP.
Can I jump in, David?
Great.
I have a couple questions as well, David.
So I'd love to kind of summate and answer David's analysis. So the first thing is that our controller right now is also very busy. So even if we take the RFP that we created from the NYSERDA template and we put it into the county's RFP template, there's possibly still a delay. So the last recommendation that came from our controller that I tend to support personally is that we go through OGS and or piggyback on another county's RFP. So we have two options that actually means we don't have to go out for an RFP. We can bypass the controller's office and process completely. The first option, like David said, is going with one of these providers, which includes Ampion, that I know both New Lebanon and Canaan have chosen and had great experience with. After going through a full RFP and vetting process, Ampion is on there. There's also Blue Rock Energy Solar, Forefront Power LLC, Next Amp Inc, Aes Distributed Energy. So if we went with the OGS option, we as a task force could contact these 5 providers with the same questions we contact for providers that came in through our RFP, and we could choose one of these 5 providers without having to do anything to do with the controller's office or the RFP process.
Great.
Another option is if we said Dutchess County did community solar on a county level, and they did an RFP process and they chose this provider, and that's the provider we want. We could also piggyback on their RFP. My suggestion would be to go through the OGS list, and I strongly support that because I think we could get going tomorrow.
Great.
We would need to just check in quickly with the chairman. I know there's a special county government meeting happening anyway, so we would just need to check in if that resolution in the past that says we're going out to an RFP might need a quick modification to say we're continuing with everything as planned, except we're going with an OGS provider. But I could certainly get an answer to that question before the special county government and full board meeting next Wednesday. So that would be my strong recommendation.
Thank you. That is great news. That's what I was hoping to hear, and that's terrific. Do we need to pass or revise our resolution just to be careful so that when the government committee has this special meeting this week, they have it in front of them and they can say, oh yeah, we'll approve that. And then does that mean that we're waiting on the full board to approve? But that's also this week, isn't it?
The full board is right after the special county government. I think there's other questions, so I won't make this motion now, but I think our motion should just read that if required or if necessary, that the county government adopt an amended resolution to allow us to go through an OGS bid, because we're just not sure if it's required or not. And then I can do that legwork, or Patrice or one of us can find out an answer to that. But I won't make that motion until people ask their questions.
So I just want to take one step back here. Even though there are 5 vendors approved by the state, do we feel the need to interview and select from a list of 5? Or is there a collective experience from this committee that would suggest that we could just identify one? I mean, that's what my highway superintendent does. He goes.
And Dave, I've had my hand raised for a while now.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
I know,
sorry.
Kara, you're next. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I saw it, and I just wanted to hear from the supervisors first, pertaining to the way the government function aspect of this question is addressed, and then I know you have a lot of value too. So go ahead, Kara.
So a couple things. So I wanted to start by saying, you know, if there was an RFP and you didn't go off this OGS list, which I've not seen, my company would likely bid on it with our solar partners, and our solar partners are developers. And so I would then just ask to recuse myself from any of those conversations, right? But I will tell you that many counties across New York have not done RFPs and not gone off the OGS list. They put out RFIs. So request for inquiry, it's similar to an RFP. It's slightly different language. It's informal. So the county is not purchasing anything, right? So
Right.
The logistics of this are they don't technically have to do an RFP, right? But
we don't know. We do. So as of right now, we were told by the controller's office. I don't know whether who this came from exactly, to be honest, whether this was a formal legal opinion. And I haven't seen the underlying document, which is this procurement policy, which probably would speak to this question.
Right.
All I've seen is the RFP template, what's required, which is an attachment to that policy. So I think we could probably get a quick answer to this question if we went back to the attorney directly and asked if, given, just to clarify, we're not purchasing anything as a county, do we fall under this procurement policy?
And then
that's what we've been told, but I'm not sure.
The other thing to keep in mind is this list of 5 providers. What are the current, what are they offering in 2022? So if you're going to limit yourself to 5 that are on that list, and there's plenty of other providers, my company is doing 3 now in Columbia County as it is. So, and we're not on that list. So I guess, again, I will recuse myself when any, detailed conversations are about decisions or resolutions, etc. But, I think I would like to know more about this list. I think if we're looking out for the residents and the businesses in the county and trying to get them the maximum amount of savings, that should be a criteria in the decision making, right? So if you know what those 5 are offering, and I think that's kind of probably somewhere between 5 and 10%, do you choose one off that list that's going to give, less savings out via the value of distributed energy resources to Columbia County?
Right. Good point,
So-
Kara. I think that given, and I agree with Tistria that, there is a beauty to the speed at which we could go off this OGS list. I'd like, I think there's a real question if we are required to do an RFP, that will delay us. And so then the question is whether, and that's a question. And
But
so
David,
I would
can I
like to
answer
resolve that.
question? I think I have an answer to that question. I don't think there would be an OGS list for community solar providers if it wasn't required to go out for RFP. The state would not have an OGS process. The state OGS list is only for things that towns need to go out for RFPs, and instead of going out for RFPs, they can jump on the
But
OGS
Tistria,
list. Yeah.
some towns have not used RFPs, and as Kara just pointed out, some counties or municipalities have used RFIs, which is news to me, which is not an RFP process. It's an informal inquiry, request for inquiries, where we could go out and similar to what we're talking about with the list. I'm not against I think your point is great. It's desirable. It's fast. But if we don't actually have to comply, I'd like to clarify whether we have to comply with the RFP. We've been told we do. I'd just like to double check that.
Well, and if you rush and you choose somebody off this OGS list and they've got 5% across the board for business, discount on credits for businesses and residents, and it's quick and good, great, fine, and there's greater savings from a reputable company, you've now shortchanged the whole county in terms of savings. So.
I think the point has been made. So we have 2 hands up, Brenda and Susan. Susan, go ahead.
I just, we, in our town, we did not use an RFP. We chose Solstice without doing much vetting of other companies. We got the 10%. What our understanding was it was going to be 10% from everybody and $100 incentive for everybody, plus $100 to the town. That was just what was across the board. I get Trista's point that why is there this OGS list if you don't need an RFP? But honestly, I cannot think of a single reason if it's not costing the county money. All the county will need to do is to vote to support the initiative. They will not have to spend their own money unless they transfer their own utility accounts to the community solar initiative. I can't imagine that an RFP would be required. And if if during this process when you consult with a lawyer, if you want me to take a look at their procurement policy, I'd be happy to do it as well if that would be helpful. But it would surprise me if we couldn't just.
I agree. That's why I want the procurement policy, and that's why I want to get a second, like a clear opinion from the lawyer that this is required, and want to make sure that they're aware that this doesn't require any purchasing. I'm not sure that was totally clear. Donal.
Muted.
Even though this isn't requiring purchasing, it's public recommending private businesses to its residents. So I think you need all the county legislature on board. So I don't think it would hurt to conform or to work with our controller's wishes to do the RFP. I know everyone says time is of the essence, and I appreciate that, but I think you really should get, the full county government behind you. And I didn't see exactly what the controller said, whether he was looking to piggyback on the actual format of Dutchess County's RFP or just on the result of that selection.
His suggestion was that we either go off the state OGS list or we piggyback on another county instead of doing an RFP ourselves.
Right, but what does that mean?
Piggyback on their selection.
Does that mean what Donal's asking? Does that mean that we simply can either choose from the OGS list or choose from another county's selection? if they're not on that list. So if Kara's company, I forgot what company it is, Kara, but if Kara's company was selected by another municipality through an RFP process, we could then add them to a list of providers to consider.
I know you can do that with the state contract. I don't know if you can do it with other municipal contracts. But I
So-
think, I think
So we need to
we're-
clarify piggyback.
We're really talking apples and oranges here, because I think the reason that we had the additional conversation about, do we need an RFP or not, is because, to Kara's point, we want to get the best deal that we can for county residents. But we have to balance that with the fact that certainly the provider that we've gone with, and some of the providers on our bid list, when we talked to them, when we qualified our provider, said that their incentives were going to be gone between now and the end of the year. So the choice is, do we want to provide these incentives, or do we want to take a longer time and look at what's available in the future? And I don't think that any of these providers can tell us now, because they're waiting to see what's happening in the market and what's happening at the state level in terms of incentives. So I think we have to decide if we're talking the short term, the next 3 months, if we're talking 2022 going forward.
Yeah. Steve Powers.
When we started the process in New Lebanon, we went to Jill at CRPC, and they had a list that they provided to us. And and Kara, you can probably clarify that more, whether they were vetted by the state or approved by the state. But I think that may be a process, and Kara, your company obviously was on that. That may be a route to go, is go back to Jill and ask for whatever list they had that's approved.
And to Steve's point, Jill can also tell you about other counties in the process that they've gone through that she's familiar with. So I think that would be valuable information. I don't know that, piggybacking on another county's RFP is just basically saying we're going to go. That's not making a choice really for the county, I don't think. But
we have to clarify what that means. It might mean that we just, and in addition to that, also choose one of these other selected companies. I want to understand what that means. I think that's what Denal's question was, and I would like to clarify that. But Tistria.
I can answer that. I can read you what the comptroller wrote. It's very clear. He called the New York State Association of Counties to see if they had agreements with community solar vendors. They no longer engage with solar power companies because many have no long-term stability, but there are other counties who have issued RFPs for community solar. He had Mike Myers reach out to New York State OGS to see if the state already has contracts for community solar, and they do. So I would recommend, this is from our comptroller, per General Municipal 3, either looking into OGS contract vendors, which is the list of 5 that Brenda sent, or the possibility of piggybacking off other counties' RFPs. Both are allowable under GML 106, save a lot of county resources. So his recommendation could be a list of 12. If we could go to 12, 7 other counties in New York State that have chosen a provider through an RFP process, we could go with any one of those 7 or any one of these 5. And again, we could then do a process. I do have a call into Attorney Fitzsimmons. I'm 99% sure that we need to do an RFP, or at least that's what our advice has been. Otherwise, why would we even be in this process and conversation right now? When we passed the resolution, I'm almost positive, if you remember, David, that part of it was that the RFP had to be issued, and it had to be issued out of the controller's office. It couldn't be issued by this task force. So, I will get confirmation on that, but I'm pretty sure that the options are to either wait until our controller can get the RFP issued, which he wants to wait until there's a coordinator on board that can do the heavy lifting there, or we make a decision to go through one of the 5 OGS providers or another county's provider.
Right. That's helpful. We also wanted to do an RFP on the merits, not just to comply. Right. We wanted to get an RFP because we wanted to evaluate these companies ourselves, which we're still going to do regardless of whether we go this other route or not. We're going to evaluate these companies ourselves. It sounds like we have the ability to choose from the list or from any other selected provider from a county that has gone through an RFP process. Can you, when you talk to Attorney Fitzsimmons, can you please just try to, if you have time, Tistria, can you just ask for that clarification, that point specifically, and get that? Once we have that, then I'm sure we can find, if there are companies that are outside of the OGS list, such as Kara's company, then we need to identify whether they've ever been selected by another county through an RFP process, an official RFP process, not an RFI. And if so, then we can consider them. It sounds like that's what we can do, and it sounds like that's what we want to do. It does not sound like we want to go through the RFP process if we don't have to at this point. Even, I would say, even if we can't piggyback the way we're thinking we can, and it's more cumbersome than that, and we only have 5 to choose from, I would still, my own personal preference, and I'd like to bring this to a vote or at least get people's opinions, consensus around this ideally. But I would think, because time is of the essence, we at least evaluate quickly within a few days, contact these companies and evaluate, okay, what deals do you have, and do you have capacity? Are you interested? From the 5 companies. If we get 10% and we get something that's on par with what these other towns have gotten, then there's no, and we know they're reputable, then I think there's no reason to delay.
So,
go ahead, Brenda.
So I don't disagree with that. I think that if we could do something between now and even the first or second week in November, that would give us time to review the providers on the merits and also to increase the pool of applicants. I like the idea of having a broader pool of applicants. But Tistria, I can't speak, or Bruce, I can't speak for New Lebanon, but I know that we used the NYSERDA RFP and then added a list of our own questions. And for us, the choice was really clear. I mean, one was up here and all of the others were way down below. So it wasn't a tight race. It wasn't a tight consideration. It was a very straightforward and easy choice. I didn't sit on the committee. I'm just telling you what the recommendation of my committee was. But I think that if we have this 3-4 weeks, we should take advantage of it and identify through NYSERDA or through others, the counties that have chosen a provider, and get that list of providers and add it to the OGS list, and then see if we can't do a quick interview process with each of them. And that could even be done by email almost.
Yeah.
Could be
We have a committee. We're ready to go. We're ready to, there
exactly.
are 4 of us.
And then we would satisfy Donald's concerns, I think, which are well stated. You know, we're recommending a private company. Let's make sure we've done our homework. Nobody wants to be caught on the left foot or the back foot because they haven't done their homework. And 2, we can hopefully get the best deal. And 3, we can hopefully get it before the incentives expire. So that sounds like a win-win to me.
So New Lebanon had the same experience where there was a clear winner, and that person is on, or that company is on this list. David, you said what I needed to clarify is basically, do we need an RFP, even though we're not procuring anything, right? That's the clarity that we're looking for?
No, I mean, that's secondary. I think we want to avoid the RFP at all costs, if possible. It's going to delay things. So I think what we want to clarify is this point about piggybacking. I agree that it's in the email. I don't think it's crystal clear to the point where I'd feel comfortable without having confirmation. The question is, does piggybacking mean that we can choose any company that was selected by another county that went through an official RFP process? And if, you know, and that's the question. If that's the case, then we do what Brenda is suggesting, and we get a broader list of these other companies, and we send emails, and we go through this process with these other companies. Supervisor Knott.
So yes, that is the clear definition of piggybacking, and many of us towns or counties do that right now. You know, if Columbia County goes out to buy a truck and some other county in Delaware County has purchased a truck from a vendor at a price that we like and it's got all the features we like, we can piggyback off of that bid. We don't have to go to bid again. So
Right.
We can pick that. So, you know, to me, I'm not sure where your process wants to go here, but if you looked at the this list of people that have a state contract or other counties, and you wanted to make a recommendation, bring that company into county government, have them do a pitch to the Board of Supervisors and say, this is the program we can offer, then I think we can get there. Another quick interesting fact, though, that Patrice had shared with me yesterday, that she had a list of people that some of our residents can go on these sites right now and purchase power through these companies. I know that we might not get our climate smart points with the state for that, but that, if our goal is to encourage the residents to buy their power from company XYZ right now, is that not true?
That is true.
Community solar is not buying power. Community solar is participating in a program that's the end goal is to create demand for renewable energy.
Exactly.
And so your past credits and the credits are the value of what your percentage of the project produced in a given month. And they show up as dollars and cents as credits. And then there's a net credit. So there's a discounting that takes place on the utility bill. So it's not a supply arrangement.
Right, which is what we all can choose a third-party supplier, but this is different. Thanks for that clarification. I think we have a plan, and I want to make sure that we have agreement on this plan. Does anyone disagree with the approach that's been laid out here? Would want to speak against it or raise some concerns about it so we can move forward? We also have two questions. One is, we may have to clarify our resolution, which is Tistria's point. So we may want to pass an amending resolution right now, just to be careful, and then the government committee. And then I also wanted to clarify with Supervisor Knott what the process, what the expectations are based on what you just said, Supervisor Knott, bringing the providers in front of the government committee and the board. I want to, so the way the resolution is structured is we would have this committee, and we would work with the controller's office to go through a vetting process, which we're talking about now, and then select and recommend, not select, recommend for a selection. We would then make that recommendation to the county government committee and then on to the Board of Supervisors. What do you need in that recommendation? So we're clear about that now, and we can plan for that. Do you need us to provide a written memorandum and a resolution describing the benefits of this provider that we're recommending and what we found in the other providers? Or do you need us to actually also come in with various providers providing presentations to the government committee?
I think if one of the providers that this committee chooses is on a state contract or has another county contract, we then could make a recommendation to the county government committee to bring it to full board for consideration.
Right.
That's my understanding.
Great. So we'll make a recommendation as a task force once we've vetted with all of the relevant information you need, like have they been selected by another municipality and where and why we want to select them, and then we can go from there. Sounds pretty sweet.
You can come in and answer questions to any other supervisors that have questions, and then we can develop a resolution based on that.
Well, we can have one member of the committee that's doing the vetting and ultimately, kind of most involved in this come to the committee meetings and make sure that if there are questions, they can be answered.
So David, in Canaan, when we go to the state bid list, which we most frequently do for highway, typically our highway superintendent would interview multiple contractors on the state list and give us the top three and tell us why he's recommending the top one.
Okay.
So then if there are questions about, did you interview other people? How did they compare? You've dealt with that proactively instead of reactively.
Okay. So do we, are we?
I'd love to make a motion. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Go ahead, Tistria.
So my motion will be that if necessary, an amended resolution for the special county government meeting next Wednesday to be passed on to the full board meeting next Wednesday, clarifying that in place of our RFP process, we are looking for authorization to either select an OGS contract vendors or piggyback off another county's RFP.
So we'll ask for a second in a minute, but we are looking for a second on a resolution to amend our prior resolution, which was passed, and I'll put together the resolution number and everything and get that to Patrice following the meeting, but amend our prior resolution, which calls for an RFP to permit us to proceed with vetting of the OGS list or other providers not on that list who have been selected through a formal RFP process in the state.
Yeah, if
No, no, no,
necessary,
no.
I wanted to say if necessary, because I'm going to check with the controller. He might say, nope, you can just go with an OGS provider since the resolution said to go out for RFP. So only if necessary.
And I think I'm sorry. I think Ron Caponera's email was, that had been accepted by other counties, not just, it wasn't open-ended, it was other counties.
Yeah. So the wording I read right from Ron's email, OGS contract vendors or piggybacking off other counties RFP.
I will take the language from his email, maybe
Perfect.
articulate it a little bit more, but we will follow that language. Is that sufficient for a second?
I'll second.
I'll second.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I will send that around, the language, and please let me know if there's anything I've missed or mischaracterized before we have Patrice forward that to the government committee. Thanks. Great. Are we ready to move on? So thank you for all that. That's good news. A lot of good news there. We may not be as behind as we thought we might be at this point, which is great. So energy benchmarking is short. It's not a complicated process. It's a bit of data entry, but we're having trouble getting the basic information. We have a committee of 3 of us or 4 of us who are ready to enter the information into the EPA database, and we've got experience in having done this in the towns, and we have requested a number of times being put directly in touch with the relevant person or people in the controller's office to communicate what our needs are in terms of information on the billing for electricity, natural gas, propane, heating oil. And we also need from facilities or in coordination with the controller's office, a complete government facility that uses any of those sources over 1,000 square feet. We did get some information, which were 3 spreadsheets for electricity, propane, and natural gas, not yet heating oil. It includes some of the buildings, but I do not believe they're all of the buildings, because we have another list from Brian from earlier this summer, Brian from Facilities McDonald, I believe is his name. And that list included other buildings and other addresses. So we need to start with a facilities list that's complete, and we need to then go back to the controller's office, whoever the control, and get the information in the most efficient process possible. I do not believe that continuing to go through this process of sending emails through supervisors and then having a supervisor reach out, they're so busy, the controller's busy. We need to figure out a more efficient process here. And I recognize that you don't want tons of people contacting staff asking for information. I am sensitive to that. But we have an approved resolution, unanimous by the Board of Supervisors, which explicitly says the task force shall work with the controller's office. And so we're having some communication issues, which is slowing us down on a really easy action here. There's not a lot to it other than getting some information, and we're ready to roll. And we'd really appreciate some a different process or more cooperation to help us do our job. So I don't know what the resolution is here. I emailed Brian yesterday for that more complete list. Haven't heard back yet. He's been very helpful in the past. I'm sure we will, but we still need to get in some direct contact with the controller of the bills, because this is just, for example, we only have of an annual amount of money that was spent on each electrical account. We need more information. We need kilowatt hours or quantities of these other fuels. So rather than every time we need something going back and forth and having it wait 3 weeks to communicate, and then having to send multiple emails to follow up on a bit of information, we could save everyone time by just simply saying we can communicate directly with the controller's office pursuant to the resolution. Supervisor Adams.
So I'd like to ask a question of one of my colleagues, Ron. When you were working with Smart Watt, how did you solve this problem? How did you facilitate the communications between Smart Watt and the county staff?
I gave them pretty much the same information that I gave to David. You know, the controller's office tracks things by meter numbers, and I think that's the confusion. You know, we've got places where there's one meter and it feeds multiple buildings. We've got places where there's one building and it's got multiple meters for either gas or propane, or for natural gas rather. And so what they needed was the information that I provided. Now, this is the first I've heard that some of the information was lacking or not coordinated. I had provided that to you, Brenda, here a while ago, that I got from the controller's office.
And I distributed it as soon as I got it. But I think the issue is would it be appropriate for a member of this subcommittee to have a contact, a designated contact in the controller's office that they could work with directly? So they don't have to wait for you or me or anybody else to get back to them. They can just call and set up a system that works for the two of them. Is that possible?
Well, that's more of a question for our chairman. I know you saw the text, the email the other day that the chairman was trying to direct these things through somebody else, so that we didn't have residents continually calling Brian or Jolene asking for things and not having a clear understanding of what we need. So I think what we need is to, and again, this would be another great reason for, I keep trying to steer us in an organized direction here of having a coordinator in place, and that coordinator can then be able to communicate with the state, find out exactly what the state needs, and then work with the department that needs to be. And so I do look forward to this getting straightened out, and I realize the frustration of volunteers trying to mingle with government, but we're in a very clear path here to get a coordinator soon, and I think that can help us all.
So
Supervisor Knott, I see you. Can we? I do appreciate what your point is, and I'm very excited about the coordinator, because I think that will alleviate all of these issues and make for a streamlined process. So you're right. It's going to be some time. I don't know, a month, 2, 3. I don't know exactly how much time before we actually get a coordinator, and we certainly want to choose the best person there. This is, with all due respect, we're not just a random resident contacting an official asking for information. We're an advisory group that was put in place to do some work by the Board of Supervisors, and we will interact in an efficient manner with, we can designate one person if you like, but with the controller's office. And again, the resolution is very clear on this. It wasn't intended to be that clear, but it says that the task force shall work with the controller's office. And it's going to be, it's frustrating because you're busy, Supervisor Knott, Brenda's busy, I'm busy, and the controller's busy. And we're creating a process here that takes more of all of our time than is necessary. And so I'm not asking for some sort of opening of the floodgates where we all 15 of us start contacting people and asking for things everywhere. It's very discreet based on a resolution that was passed. That's quite a specific amount of information, and we just need to be able to get permission. We're begging for permission to contact the official to do the work that we were told we were authorized to do. Supervisor.
Yeah, so I agree with Supervisor Knott. It'll be great to get a coordinator in there. I think it became very clear as to why we needed a coordinator that was focused on this work. But I also agree with Mr. Newman that, that even if we approved it, this coming Wednesday, it's still a process. We have to go out for advertisement, find a person, interview the person. And benchmarking, in my experience in the town, is like one of the easiest tasks. So my request is similar to Mr. Newman's. The full board passed a resolution authorizing the task force to work with Ron Caponera. Should be a middleman. I don't think it's the authority of the chairman nor any other individual supervisor to undo what the full board has resolved. And I think that if it's an issue of, time and efficiency, I think the way we're doing it now actually is more time for Ron. And again, it would be one task force member, and they already know what they need. It's not going to be a million back and forth, whereas somebody like Supervisor Knott might not know exactly because they're not so focused on benchmarking. So it's actually more conversations that are happening with Ron, taking more of his precious time. And I just think it is really inefficient. And my other request comes back to one I made before, and Supervisor Knott, maybe you can answer this. Why haven't we just given access to the online accounts to a member of this task force? And if we're uncomfortable with that not being an elected official, then I'll be that person. I'm a supervisor, put me as the person that has access. That's what the town of New Lebanon did. There's no harm. There's no, the most I could do is go and pay the county's NYSEG bill. It's not giving me access to anything other than the data, which is public information anyway, but why make it go through this process or this FOIL request or this thing that makes extra work when I literally could just be given access? And I'd love to hear Supervisor Knott why that wasn't allowed or implemented. And if it had to do with somebody not being an elected official, then could it be me? And let's get me access tomorrow to the town's accounts that I can pull the data that's needed and get it onto the task force members that are going to enter it.
Supervisor Adams?
So
Hang on, could Supervisor Knott answer that question?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
If he's there.
So yeah, I am here. You would have to direct that to Ron Caponera and see. I mean, all of our bills are filed in the Munis financial system. To me, only the controller's office has access to that information. I don't know that they can open up that database to you or I. I've never had full access to Munis. I can always go to the controller and say, this is the information I need, and they generate, whatever reports that we need. And I think what you're thinking of is in your town is a little different. Maybe that you can go online and look at your energy bills. I'm not sure we have that resource. And again, we have NYSEG and we have National Grid. We have a number of different accounts. It's not as clear cut as our towns are. It's easy to kind of do benchmarking in our towns. I get that, but no, follow up with Ron and see, what access he can provide you. I thought that we had gathered the information that was necessary a while ago. So sorry about that.
Okay, thank you. And just to be clear, I don't think I want access to Munis. I think I just want an online NYSEG. You set up an account online with the actual provider, and that would be, I don't think Munis is probably a place that I should have access. It's really just to that, it might be 7 different accounts, NYSEG, National Grid, John Ray and Sons, or whoever is providing our fuel, and they all can set up an online account for the county just for the purpose of tracking our billing, even if the county doesn't use it outside of our purpose.
Right.
But I'll follow up on Caponera.
We have to do this on an annual basis, so doing that now would make sense, and then we don't have to interact really with the controller's office unless there's a question that we need to resolve in the future. But Supervisor,
I can get access to NYSEG's usage and annual, monthly, month over month annual spend. But National Grid's another ball of wax. There's not like a portal that's available so you'd have to get a written permission from National Grid for a spreadsheet of that information.
we'll work with the controller's office. I want to clarify this a bit before we move on. But Supervisor Adams?
So I just wanted to say that I think Tistria's suggestion that we do online access would be the ideal situation. But I guess I'm struggling with the concept that we need to ask permission to contact the controller's office. I thought the resolution gave us that permission.
It does.
So that's what I'm struggling with. I don't know why we just haven't contacted the controller's office.
Because we were told that we needed to go through a supervisor. That's why. And I respect the supervisor who told me that.
Well, if that has not proven to have worked, then I think we need to consult with that supervisor about direct access. And I
Okay.
know that that's what this conversation is about, but I don't want it, I don't think it should focus on permission because we've already been given the permission.
I agree. We don't need permission according to the way the resolution's written.
Right, it's
So
clear.
Supervisor Knott, we plan to reach out to the controller's office directly. I understand that there's some, it sounds like maybe some concerns or guidance that shouldn't happen. In this case, for this specific needs, do you see a concern at this point with us, one of us? It could be me, it could be Tistria, reaching out and going through a process, just describing what we need so we can just move forward.
No, I would say it should be one of the supervisors, but I mean, you know, you're gonna do what you're gonna do, so do what you gotta do.
Okay.
That's all, you know?
Well, we'll be very careful not to, you know, cross wires with people.
I will do that, David. And actually, Supervisor Knott, you weren't on one of the meetings, but I had offered to do this, and then we wanted to kind of check with you because you had been the link, and so
Okay.
that's why I didn't connect directly. So I will take that on, David. I will call.
Okay,
Ron.
and our little committee will work with you, Tistria, and we'll give you the exact information we need. You know, but
Yeah.
we'll get you up to speed.
If you can just get me what we received so far and then what we need in addition or differently.
I'll send you an email following up. And
Okay,
that will be very
perfect.
clear.
Okay, thank you.
I'll
And
do that.
again, you know, none of this was ever given to me. I mean, I was asked for our utility bills and total of energy usage, and so that's what I got for everybody. So, you know, that's what I thought we needed, and that's what we got.
Well, and we appreciate that, Supervisor Knott. It is part of the information we need. We just need to make sure it's complete. So we'll follow up with the controller's office through Tistria with some specific clarifying questions, and hopefully we just move forward, and that's that. Okay. Is there anything else on benchmarking? Thank you. The Climate Smart Coordinator. So this is really exciting. I don't know if Supervisor Knott wants to give a quick, this was something that you developed as a concept. Let me just introduce it a bit. We've been talking, as y'all, getting some private funds from CLC, who's generously offered to provide up to $150,000 over the course of 2 years. Was the original offer. It was not a formal offer. It was informal, subject to an MOU and developing an agreement, and to hire a coordinator. And so that was the initial offer. And Supervisor Knott, can you give us a quick update on the idea that's generated since then and what we're working on now?
So yes, we did some research to try and figure out, you know, any of our jobs are pretty typically civil service titles. And I wanted to know where a typical climate smart coordinator position fit. And as we looked around to other counties to see what other people had done, it's usually been a planner or somebody else. Somebody used another title. They already had an existing member and they dubbed that person the climate smart coordinator. So we were kind of looking to create a position, you know, to create somebody that we could later. And it's been brought to my attention, there's a position that's already been approved in our civil service world called a public information coordinator that falls under solid waste, that has been used in the past to generate public information in our solid waste programs. And I really felt that fit a lot of the narrative that we're looking for with a climate smart coordinator. So the idea was that that position, if we created and filled it, would be 50% funded by DEC. And so we have put that in the budget for next year, and I'm preparing now to bring this resolution to our salary review and county government and public works in this coming month here to actually create and fill a position that will be both a public information coordinator for for solid waste, as well as a climate smart coordinator to assist this committee with their initiatives. And I do think that there's general support for that. Like I say, I've already got the money in the budget, but we could do it this year if we can find somebody quick enough. As you know, there is a hiring process, but so yeah, we're ready to move with that, and we're rolling.
Yeah, thanks. Tistria.
Yeah, I just want to thank Supervisor Knott and Supervisor Adams and Collins and David Newman for your hard work with this. I'm kind of excited for the idea of, it being paid in part by CLC and part by DEC. And I really think it could be a good fit. And Supervisor Knott, correct me if I'm wrong, but at this point, we're really just waiting for the final approval from the attorney on the draft MOU, which should be to us by end of day tomorrow, according to the chairman. And then that'll get on to the CLC for their input and review. And I think Supervisor Knott, it's planned on being presented to the county government at the October meeting and then getting to full board for the November meeting, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Then I made that contingent on the MOU getting approved. I mean, it's in the budget, it's moving ahead. We can fund it this year if we brought somebody on for the last couple months. So, yeah, we're ready to go with that. So.
Just to clarify, whether the CLC comes to an MOU with the county or not, the plan is to move forward with the coordinator position, paid 50% and possibly 50% by CLC, possibly the other 50% by the county.
Exactly.
But the hope is that we can have it all together where we're working with the CLC and have the MOU. The other thing is you might see the job description and approval for the position happen before the MOU, but our goal is to have it all potentially happen at once. So I'm pretty excited about that. And thank you both to the CLC and David and Supervisor Knott and everyone that's been working hard on it.
So I know, Steve, you have your hand up, but I have a question, which I didn't have all that information until right now that, that it could be moving forward and that the county would be willing to pay for half of for the climate smart half of the position for some period of time, which is great news. We're still going to pursue the support and the offer from CLC, of course, for ensuring the longevity of this position. But eventually it'd be great if this was fully funded by county government like it has been in other counties. And that, I think, was always the intention, is to help kind of start it out and then prove the concept so that we could demonstrate that this position actually is really worth it and pays for itself. And I think we will do that. So the question is, in the job description that goes out, it sounds like this is moving regardless, and which is great. And the MOU process will happen as quickly as possible to support it. But it sounds like there'll be a job description that gets approved in the next month or so, and then gets publicized. Just want to clarify that job description, and I know we've had some discussions on this because of civil service requirements, will fully represent the climate smart component and will be titled not as a public information officer for solid waste, but as an environmental sustainability coordinator for the county, which includes under it the solid waste information and outreach and all the climate smart coordinating. I just want to clarify because it's been a little unclear to me. We've had a draft of a job description that I think has the substance of what we all agree on as a small group that have been meeting. But I'm concerned that if we don't have that substance in the job description, we're not going to, and we don't have that in the hiring process, we're not going to necessarily get the best person we could get.
So I'm working on that currently. Supervisor Knott, I'm going to call Michael to clarify. I think, and Supervisor Knott or Adams or Collins, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's opposite of what you're saying. I think because of civil service, it has to have the civil service title and that job description. And I think then the additional information is going to be that there's also this other role with this other title with these other things. It happens in the town quite often where we have to advertise and hire under civil service. But like the chairman said in our meeting the other day, there can be a lot of additional roles and responsibilities that obviously you want to be able to advertise, because if you're going to attract someone to a position, they need to understand that it's this whole entire position. So I'm working on clarifying that, but off the top of my head, I think it's probably opposite of what you're talking about. I think the title is going to have to be a civil service approved title, just like it is in other counties. And then the additional duties is going to include all of the coordinator duties. But I will get clarification on that as soon as possible.
Well, and there's another piece in play, because the title, the civil service title that exists, I don't believe is the civil service title that was used in other counties. It is a civil service title that was used in solid waste for a former position in solid waste. I don't believe that we've asked Michael what the civil service title would be for an environmental sustainability coordinator. Other counties have done it. We need to ask them how they've done it, or we need to ask her how they've done it. But I know that the civil service title that we're talking about was existing on our payroll. We don't know that it was the title that was used in other counties.
So we need to clarify that. I would appreciate if we could clarify that. And my concern, and I hear you, Tistria, maybe it has to be officially titled Public Information Coordinator, but in the job description that actually gets advertised, I think we need to capture what we've got in our job description, or else, and I don't, maybe that's what you're saying we'll do. My concern is that there'll be a formal job description and then there'll be an in-order description, and I don't know what's getting communicated out to the candidates. It's not clear to me. I'm just trying to understand that.
Well, and I think Tistry is right. There are job descriptions that incorporate by reference other duties, but I think we want to make sure that the job description is clear so we attract the right applicants to begin with. And also we want to make sure that whatever job description we use will make us eligible for the for the funding or the points associated with it. But I did talk to Michael about this a week or so ago, and I don't know that we have explored how other counties have done it. And I think we, certainly this position, that the title that we've used existed in our bag of titles, but I don't know how other counties have done it.
And not to belabor the point, but for example, if the person gets hired officially as the public information officer and has these other duties, can they be referred to both for climate smart purposes? That was Brenda's point, but also just in general, can we all see that person be titled at environmental sustainability coordinator? I think that's very important because it tells people the breadth of the work they're doing. And it articulates their role with regard to the climate smart work as well to the public. And also, I think it will be important to the donor, assuming that some of those CLC funds will be used over the next maybe 4 years. I think it's very important for them to know that this 50% of the job that they're funding is really as much of a priority as the other 50%. So those are the concerns that I just want to try to get out ahead and make sure that we don't have something that's kind of unworkable and we're like locked into that description, and then we have some concerns about whether that will work for us.
And I know we're making sausage here, but we also have to decide, if these duties are equally split between planning and solid waste, can one job description report to 2 department heads? That's another question that needs to be clarified.
That is exactly right. That needs to be. So how do we? Sounds like you all are doing that. You're in the process of clarifying all those questions, and I'm bringing this to CLC. They have an executive committee meeting next week, and there's a board meeting coming up a week from Saturday. And I really would love to be able to get this. I don't know whether I'll have to ask Troy. I don't know whether this is possible, but try to get this some level of approval through from them, so there's some clarity as to their intentions, and the county can plan on that. So having these points clarified about the job description, I think is really important. That process, if it's possible. to get it done before Tuesday. I don't know if it is. Tistria, do you think that is possible, or?
Yeah, I'm sending an email right now. Michael's usually responsive within an hour or two. I'm including everyone who was on that meeting earlier in the week. So
Great, thank you.
just to review the questions I'm asking, does the title have to be public information officer, or can we find a sustainability coordinator title under civil service for it? Can the position work under 2 departments, solid waste and planning department? Can the job description be expanded from what is in the civil service job description, especially for when we advertise the position, so the applicants understand the entire job we will be expecting of them? Is there anything else?
I'd like to clarify the second point. The second point is, can the same job description report to 2 department heads?
Okay.
In the same official, yeah.
Right, individual. I mean, I know with clerks, for instance, clerks move around and other admin positions move around.
Yeah, I said can the same position, which to me is the same as individual, but I can change it to the
Yeah.
can the same individual work under 2 departments.
And report to 2 supervisors. One of them, prospective supervisor race. You have your hand up. Go ahead, please. Not supervisor race. I'm sorry, I used the wrong term. I meant supervising this employee. But Jolene, go ahead.
I just want to clarify that the public information coordinator position I actually held in 1990, and I answered to both tourism, the Board of Supervisors, and Solid Waste Committee.
Great.
Okay.
That sounds like quite a job.
It was fun. But yes, you can have multiple department heads in that position.
Well, that's good to know. I think that email sounds great. Tistria, we have a couple other hands up. Thanks for being patient. Steve.
2 things. One is, again, I'd suggest running this by Jill to make sure that this whole thing passes muster with the state CSC. And the other thing is, for, I guess, Supervisor Knott, is this money guaranteed from DEC, or what's the process involved here?
So as far as the money being guaranteed, there's no guarantees in life, as you know, but this has been an ongoing program with DEC. We expect it to remain for a while. With the state and the state's budget going forward, there's no guarantee, and you know that. But yes, it's pretty good funding at this point in time. You know, to answer some of your other questions, David, you know, all those questions that you brought up were questions that we had discussed internally. And had been discussed. We had searched civil service to see what other titles had been used by other counties. Civil service didn't have a sustainability coordinator or a climate smart coordinator position. In talking to the state, I mean, the state, every county has just taken a position that exists already, like a plan or 2, and they've dubbed them to be a climate smart coordinator. So it was my understanding from the state, and please clarify that with the climate smart task force people, that you know, we can dub this person a climate smart coordinator, but
yeah, I think you're right, Supervisor Knott. I don't have that concern because I know from talking to some of these coordinators in other counties that they are in the planning department. They have other titles. I'm not concerned about that. It was more the other questions about being supervised by 2 departments, which we're going to get clarification on, and also the job description so we can advertise it a certain way. And the title, but I don't think it's going to be a problem from compliance with the climate smart program, but I will clarify with Jill.
And just to reiterate both what Supervisor Knott and what Steve brought up, I mean, whoever the coordinator could be David Newman, right? Like the title that the person holds as a county employee, I think is pretty irrelevant. We're going to have to pass a resolution as a task force and then county government and then the full board that says this person is the coordinator. It could be Jolene Race. She holds a civil service title. And we could say you're also the coordinator. In this instance, thank goodness we're not putting extra work on any of our already full plates. But, you know, one thing, and I know, David, I think we disagree on this. I see it as 2 really different things, right? We have the MOU with CLC that says this person for at least 50% of their time is going to work on these duties, and it's going to be focused on CSC related tasks. Then you have the hiring through the county, which is all under civil service. It's very particular. And I think for me, the only question is when we advertise, can we also include all these other tasks so we don't get someone who applies that thinks they're going to do X and they're actually doing X, Y, Z, and K? which I would assume the answer is yes. For me, that's kind of the only piece. The idea of attaching the job description to the MOU or any of that, I think we have to really think of them as two separate things. We're hiring a county employee, which has to go under civil service requirements, which are very specific. There has to be a title. And then that person is also going to be the climate smart coordinator for at least 50%, if not more of their time. And here's the duties that are going to fall under that role. So I'm not here. I don't share those same concerns that one doesn't allow the other, even if we have these specific civil service requirements. There are people here in the town that do 27 other jobs than what's defined in their official civil service title. It's really, I don't know. It's almost.
Well, I don't think we have a disagreement. I think you hit the nail on the head with the agreement, which is the concern and the question is whether we can advertise one job description which captures all of these responsibilities. That's the question, and I think we both have that question, and we want to resolve that. I agree. If a civil service, it fits in a slot somewhere, and that's how we get it. That's one thing. Can we title it and can we describe it a certain way? Otherwise, and it sounds like hopefully we can, but we'll clarify that. But thanks for doing all that, and thank you, Supervisor Knott, for an innovative idea and really pushing this forward aggressively. It's super appreciated. It's also really exciting because so much of the climate smart work, getting back to the substance, is about solid waste. And there's going to be great synergies here. These are not two mutually exclusive jobs. This is a job that hopefully evolves to be a really interesting role for the county, which addresses a lot of pressing needs that Jolene has in her department, pre-existing needs, and supports her work and their work in that department, and also promotes the solid waste work for Climate Smart, among other things. So thank you all so much. This is very exciting. Any other comments on the coordinator? We're going to continue to do this work and keep you all updated on the progress. We one more thing is we have a goal of having a group of people that help to provide input on the hiring process, including people, a representative from the Climate Smart and EMC, and hopefully we can get that done as a group and get it done quickly. So let's move on. The Tri-County EV announcement. So Supervisor Knott, once again, a question for you. I think fundamentally there was an article that was published yesterday which talked about how 3 counties in the state had come together to pool their purchasing power for EV vehicles and charging infrastructure for a goal of going all electric by 2030 in those counties. And then there's mention of a statewide effort that could, really ramp it up and make this something that allows for all municipalities in the state to participate. But the question is, it's combining this point and the next point on the agenda, the Green Fleets update. The question is, within the context of what's happening now in your consideration and the work you've been doing on green fleets in the county, or considering how to green the fleet of the county vehicles, do you think this is something we could potentially pursue of joining this tri-county, making it a quad county, or somehow pushing for some state pooling power? What do you? I don't know if you saw that article, Supervisor Knott.
I quickly saw the headlines, but I truthfully haven't read the entire article, so I don't know enough about where they're going with that. I can report, the county does have a fleet subcommittee headed up by Jimmy Guzzi. I've been involved in that a few times with them, but I haven't been in there lately. But I know we did look at trying to go to some fleet vehicles this year when the state announced the $7,500 per vehicle. Right now, we're leasing most of our cars through Enterprise. We have a contract with Enterprise to provide us cars. And that program has been working pretty well for the county. And the basic line is to go from your basic Toyota Corolla at $20,000 to a basic EV car. It's about $10,000 increase. When the state came out and said we'd give you $7,500 a car, that sounded interesting. So I thought we'd pursue that. But Enterprise was able to tell us that that $7,500 rebate only comes on like a $50,000 car. So it wouldn't apply to the cars that we would be buying for our staff. So the price difference was still right out there. As you know, we did look at trying to locate some places to put some fleet charging. One of my best places was DSS parking lot, and trying to put some of our fleet cars over there that might be EV in the future. I think I was waiting on Michael O'Hara from the city of Hudson to provide us information about if we put it there, would the public be able to use it? Is there a demand or a need? We are currently expecting to get an EV charging station at the airport in somewhat the near future. I recently met with some of the engineers. As you know, maybe some of you know, the supervisors know that we're Cliff A building at Commerce Park out there. And I asked that engineering firm to be considerate of the fact that if we built that, let's bring in enough power that we might have an EV charging station for fleet cars there at that point in time, you know. So there's some movement towards fleet charging stations someplace, but we haven't got that done yet. But the price point still needs to be in favor of the residents in my mind. I know some of you might differ on that, but I still think that we should be trying to buy the least expensive car. Jimmy Guzzi did do some good comparisons of what it cost us as a municipality to charge these, and came up with a price per mile versus getting 20 or 30 miles to the gallon with a gas vehicle. And it's still, it's coming down and it's getting out there, and we realize that it's going to be part of the future. When it comes, I don't know yet. So, but I'm happy to read and see what Albany County's doing. Maybe they got something going that we don't.
Yeah, it would be great to follow up on that question as to if that is something that looks attractive, and whether we as a county could participate. It'd be great to hear about that, you know, and see if there's an opportunity there. There might be other funding sources in addition to the 7,500 that could become available. We could dedicate some of the money that we bring in, hopefully from our campaigns, like the solar campaign, that should bring in $15,000. That would be a perfectly reasonable expenditure to dedicate it toward EV, you know, combining that into a fund to go towards purchasing to make up the shortfall there. And then there's actually a campaign. NYSERDA has the 4 campaigns, right? One of them is community solar, heat pumps, EV is another one. So we can also link up with, if we choose to, link up with EV providers, or the manufacturers and sellers of EV cars and vehicles, and do something similar where we don't buy anything, we don't commit to anything as a county, but we develop a campaign to educate people on what's available out there if they want to. I don't know much about it. I don't know if anyone in the county has been involved in a campaign like that. That also, if we do it successfully and certain number of people sign up, would be another $15,000. And then NYSERDA has a points program. If we get enough points through all these initiatives and all these high impact actions, they're called, we qualify for certain thresholds for other grants. The more work we do, the more money we get. And so we're starting. I know we have limited capacity and we don't have a coordinator, but money come in because we can efficiently knock off some of these actions. Supervisor Adams.
So I just wanted to say, about 4 years ago, we purchased an electric vehicle for our code officer. And we share this code officer with Hillsdale and Copake, and we reduced our vehicle operating costs by about 25%. So I have not looked at those numbers in the last year or so, but I'll see if I can get an update and maybe share that information with Jim Guzzi.
And there's been a lot of there's a lot of data out there on the lifetime cost of operating an electric vehicle versus a traditional internal combustion vehicle. My own experience has been the same with our Bolt. You just simply don't do much other than deal with the tires. We've got 45,000 miles on it now, and we've done nothing other than deal with the tires. So there's literally no, I can't speak for every vehicle out there, but there's a huge difference in maintenance costs that we have to factor in. if we're going to do this and really look at the lifetime cost of these vehicles versus the others. And then there's the cost of the fuel. So what is the electric cost? Our electricity is fairly cheap here. What is the cost of our electricity versus what we now see are rising gas prices once again? So I guess we'll, do anyone else have any thoughts on this? Want to add to this discussion? It's really just an update. It'd be nice to hear an update if there is someone that could follow up. I don't know who the appropriate person is with the tri-county effort. Supervisor Adams?
I just wanted to ask, again, we're also purchasing vans for the Office of the Aging, and we purchased one, I think the veterans recently purchased one. So I'm just wondering if those vehicles, because they're more expensive, might be eligible for the rebate, and want to make sure that they're included in the inventory that we're looking at or looking for.
Okay. It's a good point. I'm not sure beyond discussion at this point what more we can do to work on this as a task force. It would be great to get some more information together on what these rebates look like, what the costs are. I forwarded some information to Supervisor Knott, but I'm not sure what more we can do. We could clearly put together a group to gather this information and work with Supervisor Knott to gather more information as needed. I don't know if there's an appetite to do that at this point. It's clearly an opportunity, and it would be a shame to go through a cycle of buying in 2021 and 2022 for vehicles, or I guess we're leasing them for maybe that's a 2-3 year lease. I don't know what the lease term is, but then we're locked into those vehicles for the next 3 years. And if there are big decision points coming up on new leases for any of these vehicles, being able to have a more thorough evaluation of what our options are. It sounds like Supervisor Knott has done a lot of this evaluation, and maybe there's nothing more that can be done. I don't know. Supervisor Knott, do you feel like there's more information that might be helpful in the process of evaluating these new leases? And what the time is?
Yeah, I think what we can do to satisfy this probably is ask Enterprise that runs our fleet program, to give us a presentation on what it would cost to change to, are we going to look at 10%, 15%, 20% of our fleet vehicles? You're going to start small and work these in, but what is that added cost to the taxpayers is what we need to know. And they can give us some of that information as they deal with that. Because we do fleet leasing like this, a lot of our cost is based on resale cost of that. And I'm not sure where the resale market in EV cars is versus gas cars. Right now, our resale market on gas vehicles has been very high because you can't get any new ones. So that's helped the situation this year. But yeah, there's a lot to it, and it's a changing target. Some of the other programs that you talk about providing tax incentives work very good when you're in business or a private person, because you can get tax incentives off of your income tax, and none of that works for the county because we're not subject to some of those taxes. So some of those programs don't fit for municipal government, but then there are other programs that we may apply for that involve. So I can talk to Enterprise about coming and presenting something to county government at some point in time about what the changes would require.
Do you think we could get a presentation to this task force? Because we could then launch or maybe before that, launch a small committee, if there's interest in volunteers, to evaluate that information and perhaps bring some more information to the table for the county to consider.
So it would be I can talk to everybody else. I mean, you can make your own suggestions, but it would be my suggestion to have Enterprise come to, a government committee, and this task force can be involved and participate in that and listen.
That would be great.
And then if there's support that you can offer, or information you can offer to help support the project, you can certainly share that.
Okay, great. So let's just stay in touch on that. If you know when you can get that scheduled, and then we'll I can notify everyone on the task force that's happening. Thank you, Susan.
Yes, would it also be helpful to have Jill or Tara present on the Clean Fleets grants that are available? If we had all that information, we could sort of evaluate it, because David, I take your point about not locking into combustion engines on leases or new purchases if in fact there's a way to economically bring in or start bringing in EVs. So I know they did, I wasn't able to catch it, but they did do a presentation on this Clean Fleet initiative and the grants. Maybe somebody else caught it, or she could share it with us, or she could actually come talk to us. Might be helpful.
I think what would be ideal is to have the same meeting with the county government include an update from Tara or Jill to the county government committee, and we can participate. We can come and sit in the audience and hear the same presentation. It's sufficient. And I don't know, Supervisor Knott, if that would be something that you'd want to combine, or but that could be really useful. There's a summary of the current state incentives that they are aware of and working with to clarify the point. Do you think that would be useful with an enterprise presentation, so there's a substantive kind of continuity?
Yes, I think that'd be fine. I do think that enterprise is pretty aware of what programs are out there, but I'd like to make sure that they know what's available so that they're, you know, sharing with us all the pertinent information. So yeah, I can talk about coordinating something together, or it might be kind of a lengthy meeting, but we can coordinate something together there.
We all love lengthy meetings.
Okay, apparently.
We'll try to get this one wrapped up soon. Thank you for everyone. Any other observations, or it sounds like we have something to work toward there with gathering more information on EVs for the county, and hopefully that will develop into something more significant over time. Any other observations there, or comments, questions? Okay. Thank you, Donal. He just signed off. Last, but certainly not least, solid waste. Jolene, are you still with us? Could you give us a quick update on your exciting projects, the composting and recycling pilot projects that you're working on?
Sure, no problem. The recycling containers have been placed in all of the buildings. We are making some minor modifications on our end as to the collection of the material, but everything is up and running. We've been in contact with the facilities department, and pretty much everything's in play there. So we're just going to be monitoring the program, and like I said, there's some internal issues on our part for more collection containers. The second project that kind of is on the back burner because we're waiting for the containers to come in. They were ordered over 2 months ago, but that's just the way of the world right now, I guess. We have a composting vessel, a backyard composting vessel set up at the Copake station. We have handouts. The residents get to see it in action. So I believe they're actually even taking some scrap material from residents that are bringing it in. That station's a little unique as it's one of the larger stations, and the attendants had taken the initiative themselves to start a little garden there. So it's kind of a win-win. The residents get to see backyard composting firsthand. We are waiting to set up a container at the Chatham station once we get it. We are currently working with the vendor. We're trying to find brown material, as that seems to be a commodity that he needs. So we're working with some of the towns right now to see if we could collect their leaves and grass clippings to offset the program. As this vendor was nice enough to do this free of charge, once, you know, for us to be able to work out the kinks in the program and get it up and running. Once we get Chatham and Copake online, we'll start expanding it to the other stations. As part of our master plan update this winter, we will be reaching out to all the towns and villages to see who has community gardens. And we'd like to try to work on a program in coordination with them, primarily because we're not sure how much material that we are going to collect. And everybody knows with increased fuel prices, you know, it's going to be quite costly to make the full trip around to collect this material. So if it's something that we could work with a town where the station is located or in close proximity, we'd kind of like to join, you know, a venture. But that's kind of where we are now. Of course, we're working on other initiatives in the county directly related to department, but not to the Climate Smart initiative. So that's where we are right now.
That's a lot of exciting stuff. Good progress. Thank you. Tistria.
I think Susan had her hand.
Oh, sorry, Susan.
Okay. These stations are you, I guess I'll ask you a couple of questions. One is, are we talking about solid waste stations? The second question is, are the bins purchased by the towns? Or are they purchased by grant money and given to the towns? And third, could towns elect to participate? Like, could Ingram ask for one of these composting bins?
So actually, these containers are going to be placed at the county-owned waste stations. There's 8 of them located throughout the county. Any resident that's a resident of Columbia County can utilize these containers to bring their food waste in. Right now, it is going to be a pilot program until we figure out how much material we're going to collect, the quantity of the material, the transportation cost, and if it's you know, if we determine to stay with the vendor we are or bid out the process. If we start to get a lot of material and we can't connect with a community garden, the material that we have, and then there will be a cost associated with it. The bins that we purchased were purchased through the county. I did apply for a grant. So once the grant comes through, those containers will be reimbursed.
And the other costs for, I don't know, what any other costs you have, and if there are any other costs in transporting the material, is that just sort of, how is that paid for, or is it just sort of?
That's all paid through the county. This is a county initiative.
And what's participation been like so far?
We haven't started it yet. The Copake station has received a few residents that have started bringing in their food scraps to be part of the backyard composting demo that we are doing there. Residents in Copake seem pretty excited about just doing it on their own. So we will see what happens when we start the countywide program. And like I said, we'll be bringing the rest of the stations on board once we get material good, see what the pitfalls are, what further education we need, and then we'll go from there.
And how are you doing the education? Is that on-site stuff?
Yeah, we'll be doing flyers. We'll have a look. Of course, the attendants, we are educating them so that they can assist in those stations where the material is going to be collected.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
A couple more hands. Jolene, you will tell us when it's open for prime time, and we can communicate that out to our connections in our towns and
absolutely
all that. That'd be great. That's exciting. Tistria.
Yeah. So first, in response to Susan's question, so New Lebanon doesn't have a solid waste facility. We have a recycling facility, but we have done a composting program successfully in our town. So if you wanted more information about Ankrum kind of doing it on your own, I would encourage you to connect with Steve or Mark on our task force as to how we did it. I believe, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the town purchased the composting container and put it at our local community garden, and then the task force did the advertisement and promotion. So if you're not currently at a place where solid waste is, it's still definitely a good opportunity to do. And maybe, Jolene, at some point, you know, even us that don't have a facility can somehow collaborate all together as well.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think as we move forward and we get this program rolled out, we'll look at other options of composting are doing it. So maybe we can expand on that with surrounding towns. And I know that chipping material, if you're collecting brush or have a brush pile, is an issue. So that's a conversation for maybe this winter to see how we could expand that program.
Awesome. And my question / comment for Jolene at the breakout session about kind of reduce, reuse, recycle, and talking about my free store. I forget what they called it, but the idea, I think in Massachusetts, they do it a lot, where you had some sort of covered canopy to protect from the rain, where when people bring, I mean, often people are, putting bicycles in dumpsters and perfectly good furniture and other things. So I would love, if you're open to it, to work with you and maybe a small group from this committee that might be interested, to potentially roll something out. Obviously the winter is not the ideal time when you have snow and everything else to deal with, but potentially to work on a plan over the winter to maybe start next spring or summer. Is that something you'd be open to working on with me and maybe others from this group?
I would be open to that, but I would also like to discuss with you on the county level some of the issues that we are having with staffing right now.
Okay.
So, that's another issue that I would have moving forward, is manpower.
So why don't you and I start a conversation, and then if we think we want to explore it more, then we can come to this committee for maybe a subcommittee. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And we are going to talk about the repair. Haven't forgotten, but Bill had a comment or a question.
Well, comment for Jolene, in the village here, there's an annual leaf pickup from sometime late October all the way in Thanksgiving, depending on the weather.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that our DPW does dispose of it in a way, in some kind of not a formal composting, but since we're so close to Chatham, would it be good for me to approach the board here about possibly having their DPW bring it into the Chatham composting, since you do need that sort of material?
Well, actually, I would love to have a conversation with you regarding this. Actually, it would need to go to a location in Claverick that is doing our composting right now.
Oh, yeah.
But that is something that if maybe we could work out some logistics, I would love to have another conversation with you regarding.
Okay,
yes,
thank you.
definitely. Thank you.
And one other suggestion, Jolene, I mean, we do composting on our farm, and we accept scraps from a food plant in Hudson, and which please don't take from us, but as long as it gets composted. But we also get wood chips delivered from the town of Ghent. When they're out clearing trees and they happen to be in the neighborhood, they'll drop it off. They have a spot they know. Our highway great at doing that. And so I wonder if there's an opportunity for us to connect with more towns. Don't take our wood chips, please, but maybe other towns that don't have those drop spots.
Yeah, that would be great. I know I've contacted 3 towns right now that are willing to give us the material to be utilized. So connections, please have them give me a call. Definitely.
Great. Okay. Well, we can bring this up in the EMC meeting as well, because that's the natural conduit to the towns.
Yep.
And then get back to you if we have some leads.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
And David, could I just briefly talk about Jolene's request, which I think makes a lot of sense, and I might defer to Jolene. I think it makes perfect sense once we have a coordinator for that person really to be the point of contact for all town task force requests that have to do with county programs or county departments such as solid waste. Jolene, in the interim, like let's say it's 3 months out or 2 months out before that person is hired, do you want for now requests to go through David as the chair of the county CSC?
That would be great. That would be great. A lot of times I receive a number of emails during the day. Some of them are directly related to town programs that we work on. Climate Smart, and it's not that I wouldn't love to answer everybody's questions, but it's very time consuming. So if there was like a question that I could get to, and then we could send it out to everyone, which is hopefully what this coordinator will do, everybody will be on the same page. But to have to answer individual emails all day, as much as I'd love to do them, as you know, in our session, you can see what happens when information is misinterpreted.
Yeah. David, are you willing in the interim to get a coordinator to have, and Jolene, I guess you would need to do at least a simple reply saying, please reach out to our Climate Smart chair. Here's his contact. Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Thank you.
And again, sitting on the EMC and Michael being on this task force, we can work with the EMC. It's a good role for the EMC to try to gather that information too, and then we can provide it in a more coherent way. I know Michael would be happy to help with that. Right, Michael?
And maybe David, even proactively.
That's fine.
Maybe you could at your next EMC meeting ask every EMC rep from each town to let their CSC and or town board and or anyone that might be reaching out to county departments regarding these types of projects, just proactively let them know, hey, we're going to have all, questions, comments, requests come through me, and then it'll get to said county departments and or the county committee. Just kind of do a communications out that way. Awesome.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Anything else? Jolene, thanks for the update very much. I may have a follow-up question on signage for recycling to comply with the CSC requirement for that, but that's going to get us some points. All of this, the composting will get us some points. So great work in and of itself, but also for Climate Smart, we appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you.
And someone's probably going to have to go around and take pictures. I know in the town we had to actually take pictures of our recycling bins with our signs and submit them. So
yeah, we'll do that gladly. Okay, last thing is the Repair Cafe. And I don't know who wants to give, Bruce perhaps, who wants to give the update on what's happened. There's this great movement afoot in our county that's spreading. It's expanding. There are pictures. Which I loved using that term. But Bruce, tell us what's going on. And
Well, then we started in New Lebanon. We were joined by Canaan, Chatham, and Austerlitz, and East Nassau, which is out of the county. We're planning an event on the 23rd of October at the Lebanon Valley Protective Agency, which is the firehouse in New Lebanon on Route 20. We're going to be going from 10 to 4. We have access to the whole firehouse. So for COVID reasons, we'll be able to open the bays where the fire trucks come out. So there'll be a lot of air flowing through. We have about 20 to 30 fixers. I mean, Kara might know better. I don't know if Kara's still here, but anyway, we have about 20 to 30 fixers coming in shifts, mostly a lot of with small appliances, lamps, some sewing, some furniture repair. We have I think two jewelry repair people. We have bike repair. It's really grown, the whole event. We have a lot. Kara's in charge of publicity. She's going to be interviewed on AMC on the 21st of October, which is 2 days before our event. It's going to be all over social media, papers, and we're hoping for a really good event. And we're going to learn a lot from this to see what actually happens. And the idea of it becoming more of a really because of the various towns working together, and there's no reason we couldn't make it, even the whole county going forward. I see Tistri has her hand up. She probably has something to add.
I do, yeah. So I think this is great, and I think it's a great starting point. There were a few, not hiccups, that it does make sense for this to become a county program, maybe the next time we do it. The first is insurance. So the town's insurance carrier has no problem covering liability as an offsite event for the town, but they did bring up, since there's multiple towns involved, shouldn't it really be spread across? But because it's located in New Lebanon, they were okay this time with it being New Lebanon's insurance coverage. And then as long as there's the waiver of liability signed, Supervisor Adams brought up, what if someone rewires a lamp and it starts a fire at someone's house in 2 weeks and they say it's because of the repair. So the insurance did require, which already was presented with the Repair Cafe kit, this waiver of liability, similar to the bike. When somebody gets a bike, they sign the waiver. Steve Powers, I know you're muted and your camera's off, but if you're there, I would love to also speak briefly about the proposal, since it's a 5-town-wide program, a proposal that there's an email address and even a website that's just about this Repair Cafe. And although I think that's a great idea, I think it should be couched under something, right? Because we, as the New Lebanon Task Force, are a town entity. So then to create this kind of outside organization where the control doesn't necessarily fall with the town organization, yet the town's involved. And I don't know, Steve, if you want to talk a little bit of that. For now, we're going to go with whatever we're going with, but I do think it makes sense. Again, if it's a county program, then that website and that email address can be a county-wide organization under the county government, under the county task force, as opposed to just this kind of outside entity. Steve, can you speak to that a little bit more?
Yeah, I think you certainly expressed my concerns about it, because here we are. This is a CSC program initiated within New Lebanon, and now it has expanded out to other towns. And where's the accountability now to New Lebanon or to any of the other towns, because they are creating a separate email address and separate potentially a separate website there. So I think we need to clarify those issues.
Yeah, Brenda. You're muted.
They're mowing here, so I had to turn off so I'm sorry. So I did see the waiver. I sent it to our insurance agent. What he asked is, who is doing the event? Is it the New England or Northeast Consortium, or is it the town of New Lebanon?
It's really hard to answer that because that organization, that title, doesn't really exist as an organization, and it's an issue we've run into with trying to basically make a bank account also, because we're expecting donations, and that's an issue we're dealing with. I mean, I think right now it's probably under New Lebanon because that's where it's being held and we initiated it, but there are other towns, and I don't think the Northeast, whatever we're calling it,
Consortium, I think.
It doesn't really exist as an organization. It's just a title.
Okay, so my insurance agent wanted to know if that existed, if we supplied with a certificate of additional insured, but if that organization doesn't exist and doesn't carry insurance, then I think we'd have to go to the town of New Lebanon and ask for them to add us as an additional insured on their policy.
Right.
Because otherwise, only the town of New Lebanon is covered.
Tistria just came back. She can answer that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. What was the question?
So I sent the waiver to our insurance company, and he wanted to know if the Northeast Consortium of Repair Cafes had insurance. And his suggestion was that we be listed as an additional insured on their policy. All the towns be listed. But I just learned from Bruce that it doesn't exist. It's in the nascent stages of being born. So my question is then, would the town of New Lebanon list as an additional insured for this event? How is it work?
I did not ask that question. I certainly can. My understanding is that the event is in New Lebanon. It's a town event. Therefore, anything that occurs at the event, whether you're a New Lebanon resident, a Canaan resident, a Pittsfield resident, you're covered. And then as far as the liability on the waiver, it's saying that, you know, anything that's done at this event, there's a hold harmless. I can certainly ask, if you want to forward me what your insurance company's questions were, I can certainly ask. Another option, because it's free of charge, is for you to also get a certificate of liability for the LVPA address. The insurance issues it for free, and it just says, you know, this event at this location on this date is covered through the town's insurance. That's another option because it doesn't cost anything to get that. So maybe each and every town should get a offsite liability coverage document for that date and location.
So I think we're talking about two different insurances. We're talking about event insurance, special event insurance, which is the site. And then we're also talking about the liability associated with the repairs.
Right. Just one thing, it probably doesn't make that much of a difference, but anyone who gives an item for repair has to sign a waiver holding everybody blameless. I don't know if that's enforceable, but that'll happen.
Right. I saw the waiver, sent it to the insurance agent, and he suggested additional language for the waiver. He didn't think the waiver was sufficient. So
Okay.
I'll send that.
It'd be good to send that to, did Chris send it to you? Because she's the one producing the waivers.
No, Kara Humphreys sent it to me.
Okay, so
You
Carol,
can send it to me, Brenda. I'll get it to Chris. She's working on that. So yeah, I would say whatever language your insurance wants added in, we add in. My insurance company said it was good to go. They reviewed it as written. So if there's additional language, then let's get that added in.
But I think this speaks to your point, Tistria, that it would make sense if we're going to try and populate or, you know, provide the service more broadly, that we do it under a larger canopy like the county.
Agreed.
yeah, that's an idea going forward. We just felt it was too soon to try to do that at this point.
I think your case through this town version of it. It's very exciting. I know there'll be a lot of interest, and I would maybe following the event, we can develop a committee of experienced folks on this task force. I'm sorry to always be suggesting committees, and we can't have too many, and you're all busy. But this is really exciting. I know there's momentum because it will take us a while. It might take us many months to get something approved and clarified that we can move forward and how we would move forward as a county. I think we should start right away on the heels of this event, which I'm sure will be a great success. The additional insured, by the way, I mean, I think we all know this, but it doesn't cost anything, and maybe there's a mutuality of all the towns providing that to each other, just to kind of cover everyone. Just a suggestion, but I love, and I'm excited to hear how it goes and to see for myself. Terrence.
This is slightly off topic, so if we want to wrap this up, I just wanted to get something in before the end of the meeting.
Okay, hold on. Anything else on Repair Cafe? Great. Go ahead, Terrence.
Well, I just wondered if we had any plan for following up on last week's event, and might suggest if the facilitators wanted to have our own meeting so that we made sure any actionable items or things that were mentioned or not mentioned in the summary can get kind of consolidated, and we kind of take advantage of that while it's still fresh in our minds.
That's a great
Yeah,
point.
I think that's a great idea. I can reach out, Terrence, to everyone who presented. And also Becky Meyer did send the email out. I hope everyone took a minute just to reply yes or no. So we can also get the listserv, or at least for now, spreadsheet shared with everyone so we can contact each other. But yeah, I'll send an email out, Terrence, and maybe we'll have a quick online check-in with everyone.
Awesome. Thanks.
I think most people on this call were at the event. It was really inspiring. It was a great event. And Tistria, you did a huge amount of work there to get that done. Thank you, and everyone else that was really behind it. But it was very inspiring to be in a group that large in the county, working on so many different levels and projects. And it bodes well for the future. It would be great, perhaps at the next meeting, to see if there's we could do an update on next steps, so we can all be aware of kind of what's happening there, what came out of that, and we can help you, Tistria, and the crew in helping to implement those next steps, whatever they may be. Anyway, thanks for doing all that work. It was really exciting.
Agreed. And I think we had talked about, either quarterly or at least biannually doing it again. So when we have that follow-up, maybe we'll talk about, the next one.
Yeah. Okay. That's a wrap. I thought it would be less than 2 hours. It was a little less than 2 hours. We allotted 2 hours. Thank you all. Some good, rich discussion. I will summarize the kind of action items from the meeting and send an email out later today or tomorrow. And we go onward. We move on. So I hope everyone has a great day. Is there any last remaining items? We do not need a motion to close because we're not that kind of committee. So anything else, guys? Okay. Well, I thank you all very much. Appreciate everyone's time and commitment. Have a good day.
Bye, thank you.